Let me go over the render portion of what I'm rendering on the screen. So respectively, everything is wrapped in animated view. For now, I am just changing opacity, but later on it might be used to have animation like screen is moving from left to right or from dropping from top to bottom and so forth. Then I wrapped everything in scroll view, because in a lot of cases this voice selection table will be long and the user must be able to scroll up and down and choose the one that they need. And thankfully to Flexbox, this page is responsive when I change orientation of the screen from portrait to landscape and then back from landscape to portrait. The layout of the page is very simple. I have a title and two sliders which correspond to settings of pitch and rate on speech engine.
This is how I talk. This is how I talk. This is how I talk.
When slider is moved or another voice selected, I call a function that I've created in the speech module, and all it does is just sets the proper settings and at the end calls this is how I talk, so the user can hear how it will sound. I believe this library may have a small bug, because when I set the speed it's not always respected and normally it reads a little bit slower than I set it in settings. When settings page is mounted, I run a function that I have created in speech module, and it returns this set of voices that are available on the system. It gives me a big object and there will French voices and some other languages. I am interested only in English. And the second thing is I was looking for the ones that not require the internet. And by not requiring the internet, I mean the ones that do not require something downloaded from the internet, as I'm trying to keep this application local. So, in short, I'm looking for English pre-installed voices that I can use. So this is how I see this page. It's just a title, couple sliders for settings, table that shows available voices that do not need downloading from the internet, respectively touchable components inside the table so I can select which one is needed, voice I'm going to use, and two buttons on the bottom. One thing to note, as of right now, the voice selection and respectively settings for it are not saved in persistent storage, meaning that if application will be closed and killed on the background and then relaunched, everything will go back to default settings. I'm going to implement this functionality by using something called async storage, which effectively works same way as local storage on the web. Another thing about those custom buttons, I've created them as a custom component because the original button, which is imported from React Native, doesn't have much styling to it, and so I'm using touchable opacity, and that allows me to style the container the way I like it.
This is how I talk. 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 This is how I talk.
Here are some modifications that were added to settings page. I have added the value of the slider so user can see the change when the slider is being moved. I also have noticed that the width of the sliders weren't even, and the reason for it because I wasn't passing the width to the first slider. I also set the width of the table that contains the voices, so it doesn't stretch if the voice name is long. The reset button now resets the value of the slider and the number next to it. I also added the property step to slider component, so now the slider moves with increments by 0.1. I added callback on value change to slider, and I use this value to set the number next to slider when I move it. And I use callback on sliding complete to read the final value which I pass to speech engine. I also added couple more methods to speech engine module. And for simpler management, I created two objects which hold the values. One of them is defaults. This is something I reset it to, and user choice, which holds the values that user sets. And the last, I have created the module called persistent storage, It holds a couple methods that I'm using to save information from the user and retrieve information from the user, as well as remove. Remove is really just a helper method when I'm debugging it, so I can remove the settings.